Oh, we have extra mics. My name is Gregory Elwood. I'm with the Playlist, and I'm so happy to be here to moderate what is my #1 movie of the year, which I think is a masterpiece. And I'm so glad that you're here for this. But we have some wonderful people who contributed to this film to talk to you about it. First off, he plays Rudolf Haas. Please welcome Christian Friedel. You may have also seen her earlier this year in Anatomy of a Fall, but she's also incredible in this film. Please welcome Sandra Hüller. And the incredible sound designer of this film. Please welcome Johnnie Burn. Well, congratulations on the film, guys.
Thank you.
So I was able to talk to Mr. Jonathan Glazer, the director of this film, a couple months ago, and he had told me, Sandra, that when he had first sent this role to you, that you did not want to do it, that you had turned it down. Is that correct?
I hesitated, yeah, that's true. And he didn't send the role to me, he sent two pages of a couple fighting. And I didn't know it was a film by him, neither did I know it was about the Husses. So I said, yes, I'm going to come to the casting, although it is very common in Germany when a director from another country comes, you don't get any information about anything which we're not used to. So I felt like, okay, let's try. And yeah, and then I realized it was this topic, which was like, I had a physical reaction to it. I didn't want to be a part of it at all. I never had planned and, taking on a character like that or be involved in this topic or anything. And then I heard it was Jonathan Glazer, so the page turned again, and I was thinking about what would be his approach, and then we discussed it for a long time. And also we did a proper casting together to find out if we want to spend this time together. Yeah.
Christian, I have to ask you, were you just sent sides, or did you end up auditioning? How did you become part of the project?
No, it was different because I had to do a self-tape to describe myself and to say why I did become an actor without knowing the role, without knowing the script, but only knowing it's for a new project of Jonathan Glazer. And I decided to do it in German because I felt it's more natural, and maybe he's searching for an actor who's natural in a way. And then maybe that was the door opener because I was the only person who do it in German. And Jonathan tried to learn German, but he, after 5 words, he said, "That's not my language." But we met in London in a pub, and then he shares with me his thoughts, the script, the potential role. And yeah, I was really surprised because I didn't know the story about the Höss family, that they live so close to the original camp. And I like his vision, his thoughts about this, his investigation, and he shares with me rare pictures, and I was really overwhelmed and surprised and curious. And he said from the beginning how he tried to film this, and I want to be a part of this movie from the first minute. So yeah.
Well, I do want to ask Johnny a quick question. Johnny, the amount of work that Jonathan and his team put into this for so many years beforehand. Jonathan Glazer went to Auschwitz and spent years going through many of the documents and finding so many details about what had happened in terms of how this had all sort of been set up. But how early did he come to you to work on the sound design for this film?
Well, I've known John for 25 years, basically, and so he let me know a good few years out that it was coming, and that there was he was going to do a movie about the Holocaust, and that sound would be a key ingredient that was sort of providing counter-narrative. So I think it was probably 2 years before that he first started saying that, and then about a year before that I was sent a version of the script that had a lot in it that said different to the words that the actors were speaking. And so yeah, I'd say a year before, and that began, you know, and then I realized I needed to know everything about what kinds of sound you would hear at Auschwitz in that period of time. And so until really from that moment on and until all the way through production, until we got into post-production, I was researching everything I could about, you know, the right gun sounds and the right plane sounds and all that kind of stuff, but witness testimony and understanding what had happened there and understanding what I would have to recreate in order to have a load of sound to, you know, to do the job of the other film that you hear, basically.
And the other twist to this, which you may not have noticed while watching the film, or maybe you did, is Jonathan has static cameras throughout the house, and you guys are acting your scenes while moving throughout the house without any other camera people or Jonathan on set. Can you guys talk about what that experience was like? Jonathan thought you guys didn't love it, but when I spoke to him, but can you talk about what it was like and whether it informed your performance or not?
Well, it's a mix, and given the sujet, the topic of the film, it wasn't supposed to be fun, so I didn't, you know, that was not a question that I was asking myself, but we were really basically alone in the house. The focus pullers, 5 of them were in the basement, and I still feel sorry for them, but no, I really do, because we never met. I don't even know, I don't know them, and they did a very important work. Yeah, probably. No, I think the house is not even, I don't know. But we were alone in the house. There was a directing assistant in the house, sometimes telling us when we start and when we stop. But there were also speakers in the house. So Jonathan or parts of the team could talk to us, which they rarely did, but sometimes they didn't. Sometimes the voice was coming from somewhere, which was very scary. But we couldn't, there were no interruptions in the shooting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because no makeup was allowed in the house. We didn't have any artificial lighting. There was only natural light. The house was wired with electricity, of course, for the cameras, but also with sound, with microphones. So that did we have? I don't know. Yeah. So we had that, but it was basically around the house too.
There were 20 hidden microphones around the house as well as.
So that was you.
Yeah.
And sometimes the takes were 10 minutes long, and sometimes the camera was rolling, which I really forgot, but you reminded me of it like an hour or 45 minutes. So we would start a scene from the beginning again, sometimes even without instructions, because nobody would talk to us, so we just continued acting in those situations with the children, of course, and I didn't find it, of course it was uncomfortable this all time, like every time, like complete surveillance, which triggered very intense feelings, of course, that are related to the whole story we were involved in. So it had so much to do with guilt and responsibility, and everything what you do would be seen and would be judged and would be, you know, so it was kind of a psychological trick also. I think it was a kind of a psychological technique that they were playing with. And at the same time was very, very comfortable because, yeah, you didn't have any interruptions. You would be focused all the time. You couldn't get out of it. You couldn't hide anywhere. You couldn't, which is not so comfortable, but you know what I mean. So, and also we would only have each other. We would never think about where is this going, what is the direction of the acting, you know, all these things.
Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, Jonathan didn't block out scenes, right? He just said he would tell you to shoot the scene in the room and you guys would sort of block it out yourselves, or am I
We had a blocking day before, just to, not rehearsals. We never had rehearsals for the scenes. Sometimes we start immediately with our first impulse, but there was blocking for the angles of the camera, and sometimes we shot with 10 cameras simultaneously, sometimes we shot in different rooms simultaneously, and we can hear our colleagues in the other room. That was really amazing. Sometimes we shot inside and outside. There were scenes in the garden and scenes in the house at the same time, and we can leave the house and go into the garden and coming back and so on at the same time. And we had all the time in the world to figure it out, or to find ourselves in the situations. If there were someone, if there was no cut, then we had the chance to continue to improvise, and the improvisation helps us to dive into the situation. And then we had the freedom to decide, okay, let's continue, let's make another variation. And it was really, I like this system of shooting, because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes shooting is so technical, and we had no continuing. Sorry, it's a jet lag. Continuing problems, because sometimes it's important that you have the glass on the left, then you laugh after the second line, and so on, and you repeat that, and you're thinking all the time. No, we were allowed to make variations, and we were allowed to make mistakes. Sometimes it's not working, and then we're doing again, and that was for me a really great experience.
And Johnny, I wanted to ask you, you talked about miking the entire house. Were there things that you discovered when you got back the files or watching the scenes, sounds that you weren't expecting, that informed the scenes, that helped the movie in a way that you might not have expected?
There was. I mean, there was a lot of baby crying, I think. But, and interestingly, on the multi-camera thing, it was interesting that although there were many takes, they were never edited between takes. It was always one take that was chosen. But yeah, I think it was fascinating, because to provide the impression of real life, in real life there's always more than just the dialogue that someone's talking going on, and so with all these microphones around the house, we had the ability to always be hearing the conversation that was happening, or the children in the garden, or whatever else it was. So the first kind of 3 or 4 months of sound post-production was choosing which microphones were going on at the same time as the dialogue was happening, basically.
And for Sandra and Christian, you agreed to do these roles, you've read the script. How much did you feel you had to research on your own each of these historical figures, or did you feel that it was sort of in the script and the original book that it was based on?
We didn't want to make a biopic, and we want to create our own interpretation from these characters, and we had a lot of conversations together with John from the beginning, and I think this was for me the most important thing. I read some excerpts of Rudolf Höss's biography. I listening to his voice. You can listen to his original voice from the Nuremberg trial at YouTube, but it's the voice of a prisoner, not the voice of the commandant in his prime. So, and we want to create or figure it out together, how these characters works and live, and that was for me the most important thing. And I had to do some, for example, some technical things. I lose weight for the summer and gain weight for the winter. It's a small detail, but it was important. Or I had this beautiful haircut and wearing this costume and so on. And that was sometimes, yeah, a way coming from the outside, dive into the inside of this character. So and it was great to be spontaneous. Sometimes it's great not to know what's going on. Only today we make a dinner, or today we make a birthday party, or now you have a picnic. So that was one of our first shooting days, the picnic outside, and it was, I think, 2 or 3 hours, and we had the picnic together, and we had all the time, and then going to swim with my film son, coming back, eating some cookies, and going back into the water, and we don't know where the cameras were, and that was really a great experience. And sometimes Jonathan was collecting all these things, and the characters or built from his collection of material. And that was a lot of material, because 10 cameras and a lot of time, but yeah, that was our work and our experience.
And this is a question for all 3 of you, because it affects all of your contributions to the film. Whether you were shooting it, whether you were listening to the sounds you were creating and mixing every day, how did you feel you needed to disassociate from what the subject matter was? Did you ever feel like that it was weighing on your shoulders what you were making? Did it bother? Was it tougher than you might believe to sort of go through this on a daily basis?
I'm so glad it's over. I mean, I think, I mean, I certainly do remember feeling quite low, you know, as I began the project, definitely. And yeah, it's difficult. You know, we spent months recreating, you know, the sound of a lot of people dying. It was, yeah, very difficult to go through, I would say.
Yeah, same. I'm also happy that it's over, and at the same time, it's not over. I mean, this topic is everywhere. Fascism is everywhere. So this is what I'm, you know, this is going on and on and on. And discussions that we are having now, and that we can show the film, and what it does to you, and that we can have, like, yeah, that we can have a conversation about it. It's really important. But of course, it was difficult at times, but not as difficult as, for example, working with a manipulative, you know. It was a very good, responsible, fair, transparent work experience. So, and I always thought, however heavy this would feel, it's not as, it can't be even slightly close to what has really happened there. So everything was put in perspective every day. So even if it was hard sometimes, it wasn't hard.
What about you, Christian?
For me, it was an intense cocktail, and I felt this when I watched the movie for the first time. I felt uncomfortable, and I realized, it was the longest time for me. I had a character at my side, so because there was a summer shoot and a winter shoot, and coming back 1 year later to additional shoot. And at the beginning, I was curious. I was interested in working with Jonathan. I like the idea to change the perspective. I like the idea with this method, with this multi-camera system. But then later, I felt this intense cocktail there, because I had all these darkness, all these pictures inside of my mind. Sometimes I had some scenes. For me personally, I was confronted with my fear, my personal fears. So that was really intense, and I realized that a little bit later than in the shooting process. And what Sandra said, I think I was sitting sometimes. We were 3 months in Auschwitz. This is the Polish name of Auschwitz, and there's a little beautiful market, and I was sitting in the cafe sometimes when I had the day off, and then I was shocked how easy I forget where I am, how easy it is to forget where I am. And then I realized, oh my God, I cannot forget I'm here. There's a murderer camp next by, and we're doing this film and so on. And I learned a lot, and I'm grateful for this experience. I'm grateful to be a part of this movie, to talk about this movie, to present this movie now in the world. And I hope that many people watch this movie and talk about it. Yeah, and I learned a lot as an actor and as a human being too.
That's fantastic. And Johnny, I guess one of the last question for you is, especially in the work, what you're doing in this film, there is such a fine line of whether you could go overboard in terms of how you allow the sound to be part of the film as its own character in a way. What were those discussions like? How did you sort of judge whether this was the right choice, you needed more, etc.?
So actually, we kind of made we completed the film without the additional sound quite comprehensively. You know, almost a year into post-production. You know, we had the kind of family drama, as we were calling it, and then we went through the process of a few months of adding the additional sound on. And at first we had a screening, and we played, I think, 2024 and a few people, and Chris Oddy, the production designer, pulled me aside afterwards and said, you know, you've kind of made it sound a bit too gentle and like a country park, and you know, that it was really industrious, and you know, there was a lot more going on. I think John and I had, you know, not wanted to go too far, but the subsequent screening, we introduced the kind of more constant sound that you have, and more incidences of difficulty, and to see the whole film actually work was quite formidable, you know, with that constant juxtaposition in place. But I think yeah, it was really to understand how it worked, we had to watch it through from the beginning every time, and then, you know, pull the plug on something when it felt like it was too much, because I think it's better to experience it in terms of you know, did I really hear what I thought I heard, as opposed to it being too obvious. Yeah.
Well, all your guys' work is absolutely incredible, and thank you so much for being here. I want to let everyone know there is a reception afterwards if you would like to join and if you have more questions. But please thank Johnnie, Christian, and Sandra. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.